I want to don't forget to tell you, we are going to quiz over water on Monday. Okay, so we can chat in just a second. But we're going to quiz over water on Monday. I wanted to give you a heads up about that, just so that you knew kind of going forward that that was the plan. Okay, and we'll talk about what might be on that quiz, but I don't want to forget to tell you, which is why I wanted to pop back here to tell you that. All right, so we'll hop back to the capture question now. What kind of answers did you come up with? What are some possible sources of water pollution in the groundwater wells across Iowa? What did you say? Pesticides? What are pesticides? So they're chemicals, we'll say used in agriculture. Is that okay? Used in ag. Awesome. What else? I mean, that's a big one. That's going to be one of the biggest. What else do you think might cause some of these problems? Yeah. What's that? Tell me what you mean by that.
Like,
so the well itself? Yeah. Sure. So corrosion of the mechanicals inside the well, is that kind of what you mean? Sure, and so there might be some sort of like heavy metals that are leaking in. That's a really good call. Yeah. What else? There are lots of them. Come on, friends. You may or may not have, if you actually answer these 4 questions, know some more things right there. So if you haven't looked at that and haven't engaged with this question very thoroughly, do that right now. Go ahead and do that. Evan, what you got, friend?
Older landfills, correct, in the bottom layer.
Yeah. Landfill's the like protective layer. Is that kind of what you're thinking of? We'll say degradation. What else you got?
Like chemicals you put in your lawn and like people when it rains and stuff will wash away and go into the sewers and stuff. Drains.
Absolutely. Other things? Yeah, it's kind of gross, right? Sewage? Yeah, sewage from where? From what'd you say? From the sewers? Sure. From septic tanks? Do you guys know what a septic tank is? It's a big container where a bunch of that goes, right? Waste? Absolutely. Absolutely. Also from ag, from animals, right? They make messes too. All of that stuff. Absolutely. Sewage is one of the big ones when we're talking about bacteria. Okay? Bacteria is in that waste. They sit on the ground, and as water goes through and infiltrates in, those bacteria are going to go through the land into the groundwater and then come up through the well. Just like when you pulled that liquid up yesterday. Do you remember in your little well, your little straw well, and you pulled that blue liquid up? That's what we're talking about, okay? Chemicals on lawns, absolutely. I don't need you to out your parents right now, but I want you to think about it. Have your parents ever, or grandparents, or anybody that you know, ever paid a company to come in and spray your lawn? Spray it so that we don't have, oh no, dandelions, right? Okay? Dandelions are really good for the bees. I don't know if you guys know that, but honeybees are in threat or under threat right now, and dandelions are actually really good for the bee population. So just putting that out there. But in addition, all of those chemicals that you put down, some of them sit in the plants and help to kill the dandelions and the crabgrass and the this and that and the other. But a lot of that chemical goes where? down into the soil, down in through into the groundwater, and then where does it go next? So for us to drink, right? Absolutely, right? Like, yeah, maybe yummy, maybe not so much. Landfills. Has anybody ever been to a landfill? Yeah, what does it look like? Big mound of crap. A big mound of trash, right? So my dad, just a little tiny story, my dad grew up in Evanston, Illinois, which is just north of Chicago. It's like the suburb just north of Chicago. I don't know if you've ever been to the Chicagoland area, but it is super flat, like most of northern Illinois, okay? And just like kids anywhere that have winter, they like to go sledding, and there are no hills in that part of Illinois, except one. And in Evanston, Illinois, the place where all of the kids went to go sledding was a place called Mount Trashmore. What is it? It sounds pretty terrible, right? But what is it? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot that there was one there. Because I remember hearing that when I was a kid, right? They put a little dirt over it. They put some grass on it, and then it's a park with a nice big hill. But it's all built out of trash. Seems kind of strange. And in a lot of ways, and I'm not trying to like demonize people. I don't mean that, because there are a lot of sanitation engineers that work really hard to make sure that the pollution doesn't get out. But let's be honest. Just like when Zach was talking about the corrosion of mechanicals in the well, there's corroding and there's degradation that happens to those protective layers, right? And after years and years and years, the chemicals, that stuff that you throw away, it's going to break down. And where is it going to go? You guys know the answer. Help me out. Where's it going to go? Into the groundwater. And then where's that going to go?
Our mouths.
That's right. Last one. We've talked about this before, and I'm going to talk about it again. Iowa is an agriculture state. If we did not have the agricultural industry, we would not be the same state. Okay? There are other things that Iowa is also known for, but we produce the most corn of all of the states. Right? The most corn. We produce the most hogs. We produce, I think it's like first or second in soybeans. We produce so much stuff. Okay? We might, I don't know. I don't know all of the stats, but maybe. In order for all of those plants to grow, let me back up. In order for all of those animals to grow, they have to have food, right? And so they got to eat plants. In order for those plants to grow, and for all the plants to grow to feed us, and by us I mean the world population, if they didn't have chemicals to put on them, we would not survive. I heard some statistic, and I can't quote it for you now, but it was something like if we were unable to use chemicals to support our crops, we would not be able to feed some staggeringly high, but I can't remember what it was, percentage of the world's population. There would just literally not be enough food. That's kind of scary. Right? There would not be enough food. So do we need to use these pesticides? Yes. We do. Like, there's got to be some use of them. But there are also some safe ways to do that and some unsafe ways to do that. If you don't take care of what you're doing, we're going to do it again. You ready? Some of that pesticide is going to go onto the plant, but some of it's going to go where? Groundwater. Into the groundwater. And then where's that water going to go?
Wow.
Indeed. Okay? So we said that a lot of Iowans use the well water, right? Okay? Where's our water come from in Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty? Where does it come from? Do you know? The sink. Where does the water, how does the water get to the sink? Let's walk it back.
Water treatment.
The what?
Water treatment.
The water treatment plant. Where does the water come from to get to the water treatment plant?
Groundwater.
No. I heard somebody say it. Rivers. Yep. From the Iowa River and from the Coralville Reservoir. Right? That's where our water comes from. And we'll watch some stuff about that and talk about it later. But the thing that I want you to know is that water comes from Minnesota, that comes from north, but it also comes from the groundwater. Okay? We get our water from the river primarily. Okay? But It's all coming from the same place. Before I moved to Iowa City, I lived in Des Moines. And I was in Des Moines when I was pregnant with both of my daughters. Okay? And I was living in the city, so I wasn't drinking well water. But when I was pregnant with my first daughter, my doctor told me, she said, you need to stop drinking tap water. Like that's what I drink is water, mostly, always. And she said, you need to stop drinking tap water. I said, what are you talking about? So the Des Moines Waterworks, that is very, very good and takes very, very good care of their water, could not get the nitrate levels down. Where were the nitrates coming from? The fields up here, right? There was so much chemical being put on those fields and running down all of these tributary rivers that go into the Raccoon and to the Des Moines rivers. That water was not safe for me to drink, so I had to drink bottled water for the 9 months that I was pregnant, both times. Expensive. Kind of sad, honestly, kind of from a big picture perspective. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. And again, I'm not trying to demonize anybody, but I'm saying it's a group effort. We have to work together to make sure that this stuff is okay for everybody. Okay. There are a lot of women that are pregnant that can't afford to buy water, right? That's not something that is in their, they've got a lot of other expenses. They need to eat and they need to have a house, right? They need to be able to take care of their family. And if they have to buy bottled water in order to stay safe, that's ridiculous. Do you know what I'm saying? I just want you to think about that. This is a big deal. It's a big deal. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to do some testing next week as well. Right now, we're going to do some water notes. There's blue sheets up here. I'd like you to send one person from your table up to get a sheet per person so we can go through that.
I'll leave it at 10:25 for basketball.
Okay. Do what you got to do. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah. Uh-huh. So I mentioned earlier that we have a water quiz on Monday. I will tell you that I'm writing the quiz and I haven't done so yet. Okay? When I write the quiz, I'm going to look at 3 things in particular. So I'm telling you this now so that you know what things to look at because it's going to be the same stuff that I'm going to look at. So I'm going to look at, right? You're going to write this down, right? First one that I'm going to look at is this one, the one that we're going to fill out today. Okay? I'm definitely going to look at that for some of the questions. The other 2 big things that I'm going to look at, one is the aquifers lab that we did. Okay? The questions that are associated with it. And then the third thing that I'm going to look at primarily is the groundwater video information. This was the stuff that you did last Friday when we were talking about groundwater, we were talking about wells, all of those things. Okay? Those are, if you're going to study 3 things, those would be the 3 things that I would look at before you come in tomorrow for sure. All right. So we're going to do some notes today. We'll probably get through this and have a little bit of time to work on the back. If we don't get time to do the back, you'll do that for homework tonight or tomorrow night or Sunday night, but at some point before you come in on Monday. Okay? So water notes. A lot of this is just kind of putting together what we already knew. Water on our earth. It's made of 3 types. We did this last Friday. You did this last Friday when you counted that pasta. Do you remember there were 3 kind of major types of water, 3 categories, we'll say. What was one of them? Try again. Oceans. So oceans are what kind of water? Let's do one at a time here.
Salt.
There's salt water, right? And how much of the water on Earth is made up of this saltwater stuff? 97%. A whole lot of it. Almost all of the water on Earth is this saltwater stuff. And the salt water is not usable by us. Yeah, so there is a desalination process where you can take the salt out of it, but it's very, very expensive. Not to get all of the other stuff out. Yeah. And even if you did just have to boil it to get enough energy to get a large amount of it, boiled would be, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can absolutely boil a pot of water, right? Like, that's not hard. But if you think about trying to do that all the time, yeah, it would be pretty tough. All right. So oceans make up 97%. What else you got? What's the next biggest? Frozen stuff is next, and then we got those rivers. So frozen, so that's like the glaciers and icebergs. Is that fresh water or salt water? It's fresh. Right. It's all fresh water, but it's frozen. We can't get it, okay? This is, what do we say, 2% of all of the water? It is fresh, but it's inaccessible. Accessible to humans. Can't use it. It's there. We know it's there. Eventually it's going to melt. It's going to go mix in with the ocean water, so that's nice, but then it won't be usable by us anyway, so it kind of doesn't help us at all. How much is left? 97, 98, 99? 1%. One measly little percent. Not very much. Is fresh water, fresh liquid water. This is the stuff we can use. Where do we find it? Ponds, lakes, rivers, streams, creeks, blah, 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 blah. Like, we could just come up with lots of different brooks, all of these things. They all kind of fit in here, right? Yeah. These don't make up most of it, though. Where is most of that fresh liquid water? Do you remember? Aquifers, groundwater. Okay. That's the stuff we've got. There's one other place that we have some of this water. He mentioned in that quick video with the gentleman with the very strong Scottish accent. There's one more place where some of that water exists.
Ice.
Not ice. Up in the sky, right? Water vapor and clouds. All right. This next little bit here is just a review and reminder of the water cycle. Okay? We studied the water cycle a while ago, but it's always good to revisit these things so that we remember what's going on. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and zoom this out so we can do this. And you are welcome to join me. We're just going to label some things so that we can kind of keep track of what's going on here. So I'm going to start with what drives all of the water cycle. What is the water cycle driven by? The sun. The water cycle is driven by the sun.
Y'all have a good weekend.
You too. Good luck. Okay. The water cycle is driven by the sun. So let's start over here in this little pond or river or whatever this thing is. We don't really know. Got your nice little liquid water that's sitting here. What's going to happen to that water? It's going to evaporate. And by evaporates, we mean that it turns from liquid into a gas, okay, into water vapor in the air. And then what happens to that water once it cools down? It's not going to rain quite yet. It's got to condense. It's got to have condensation, right? It's going to make what? Clouds. So we've got some condensation. The gas turns back into a liquid. Stays up there for a little while. I feel like he said like 9 days at the most, so not a long time. And then what happens to that condensed liquid? Now what's it going to do? Precipitate, right? So there's going to be some sort of precipitation. It might be rain, it might be hail, it might be snow, but it's going to fall down in the form of precipitation. Down it comes. And then, in general, one of two things is going to happen. What's one of the things that water will do when it gets to the land? It could run off, right? Or it could sink down into the ground. Do we remember the word for that one? I just heard it. What'd you say? Infiltrate? Yes. Yep. Infiltration. 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 And we'll define these words in just a minute as well, in case you're like, I don't remember that one. So some of it's going to infiltrate, and some of it is going to come off this way, and it will run off. Okay. The water that infiltrates is going to go down as far as it can. Generally, water goes down until it reaches this line. What's this line that we have right there? Talked about it yesterday. The water table, yeah. And we'll define all these terms like I just said a minute ago. Okay, but that's the water table. It's kind of where all of that water hits. It's the dividing line between this part down here, which is called the saturated zone. Okay, yeah.
Is the water table at like sea level?
No, not necessarily. Yeah, because like there's a water table in Colorado, right? That's up higher than, because does that make sense? Yeah. So the saturated zone is where the all of the spaces are filled with water, and then just above that is called this is going to blow your minds, unsaturated zone, right? It's kind of a wild and crazy decision. Okay. And the zone of saturation, or the saturated zone, is also known as an aquifer. Okay. So much of this we've talked about before. The last little piece that we put in this week when we've been talking is that we're going to build a house up on this hill. And this house isn't anywhere near a city, but if somebody's going to live there, what do they definitely need? They for sure need some water. So what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to dig a well, aren't they? Yeah. So they're going to have to dig way down deep. How deep do you think they're going to have to go? I mean, I wasn't looking for a number. I meant more like, if they just go here to the unsaturated zone, are they always going to get water? No, like today they might. But where do we really, what line do we need to cross in order to make sure that we're going to get, we're going to make sure that we can cross that water table so that we can tap into the aquifer, so that we can make sure that we are able to get water. So the well must go below the water table. We have used use a lot of terms in this that I want to define here, just so that we've got a very strong understanding. Sound good?
Yes.
Here we go. Runoff. Runoff is rainwater. Okay, that cannot be absorbed by the ground. This is the runoff in that picture. It's excess water bless you, that flows across the surface. That cannot be absorbed by the ground is this runoff. The rainwater that can be absorbed by the ground is that infiltrated water. A little bit funny. These are exposed, we should say, verbs here, right? Okay. Rainwater that flows into the ground okay. It flows through cracks in the soil or in the rock and into air pockets in the soil. The infiltration water is the stuff that fills up the aquifer. So where is the infiltration in this picture? There at the picture?
Yeah.
Where in the picture?
The red.
These guys here, right?
Yeah.
And groundwater, this is going to blow your mind, I think, right? Is water that's absorbed into the... Right. Okay. It will infiltrate until it reaches the zone of saturation. Okay. That is where all of the air spaces are filled. On the other little side of that paper, we're gonna do two more things real quick. Here we go. The water table. We talked about it. We've kind of defined it, but we want to be official so that we're all talking about the same thing. The water table is the line that separates the saturated zone below from the unsaturated zone above. Okay? The height of the water table does change. It changes seasonally, depending on if it's a wet season or a dry season. Okay? It can also change more dramatically and more permanently if there's a drought. Okay? But we do want to make note that it can absolutely change okay. It's important to be aware of where that water table is to drill wells and also just to be aware of how much water you've got available. Quickly, 2 threats that we have to having access to water? Yep, using the water too fast. Call that overuse. Okay. The fear is that we will run out of water. And that's a real thing. It's a real issue. Remember I mentioned yesterday the Ogallala Aquifer that exists underneath what state? Do you remember primarily? Nebraska, right? And it kind of stretches north and south, but Nebraska is kind of what is known for that, okay? The size of the Ogallala Aquifer has decreased steadily over the last decade or two. People just keep tapping into it. Will the Ogallala Aquifer get replenished? Does it get replenished? It does, but it's not a very fast process. Do you remember how we said that fossil fuels are being made all of the time? But we use them really fast, right? And it takes a long time to make more coal and to make more natural gas and all that sort of thing. Same kind of deal with this. If we use all of that fresh water, we have to wait a long time for it to be filtered down. Okay? We call that, or we can kind of say that the use exceeds recharge. Okay? Where it's getting filled up. That's one big threat to having water. What's the other one we've talked about at the beginning of the day? What's that?
Couldn't really run out of water. Because it rains.
It does. But the amount of water that we use, like the rate at which you use water, and I'm not saying you, but like that we all use water, is much, much higher than the rate at which water is coming down is raining. Does that make sense? So I totally agree. It's not like we're going to like run out of every single drop. But you being comfortable and happy to be able to take a shower every day, like that could be in jeopardy. Does that make sense? That's what I'm talking about. Okay. One of the issues is overuse. What's the other one? Chemicals, right? Pollution. And contamination. Only 1% of the water on the earth is stuff that we can use, you guys. If we screw it up, what are we going to do? It's a problem. I want you to flip that paper over real quick. I want you to notice that it says on that first page that you need to, read something, right? I'm going to put those textbook pages up on Canvas. You need to read and answer these questions. That second page that says analysis, you can cross out. That does not exist because that's something for a different lesson, okay? But this first page, you definitely want to read it. You definitely want to have it filled out. I promise you that at least one question from the quiz will come from that page. Okay? That's a, fast hint for you. You're welcome. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Be well, enjoy, stay safe, all of those good things.